Equals I never thought revenge would feel quite like this. A heavy weight in my chest and a fiery ember in my stomach. My name is Alina Miles, and on an ordinary Tuesday morning in Briarwood, Illinois, I had unwittingly stepped onto a path that would change everything. As the sun peeked between the branches of the towering oak trees lining my street, casting dappled shadows on my front porch, I clutched my cup of coffee like it was a lifeline. I watched the steam rise like whispers of secrets yet to be revealed, the aroma of roasted beans mingling with the crisp autumn air. There was something about the stillness of the morning that made the world feel both peaceful and infinitely fragile, as if every moment was a silent countdown to an explosion. I just don't understand how he could do this, I muttered into my mug, frustration boiling inside me. My husband Greg had always been a reliable man, the kind of person who built his routine around consistency. A devoted provider and most days a dutiful spouse. But lately that image had begun to shatter like glass underfoot, revealing jagged edges of betrayal, and it hurt more than I could express. I could still hear the voice of my best friend, Kayla, echoing in my mind from our phone call last night. Alina, you need to confront him. You deserve to know the truth, she had insisted, her voice unwavering. Yet so many things convoluted my thoughts. What truth? The late nights? The whispered phone calls I had instinctually dismissed? The indication that my dependable husband, now seemingly two-dimensional, had been hiding something darker beneath his stony facade? Part of me felt like a fool for ignoring the signs, but a much louder part felt betrayed. The clanging of my heart against the walls of my chest was deafening. I took a deep breath, inhaling the last remnants of my coffee's warmth, and allowed the taste of bitter awakening to linger on my tongue. I glanced toward the door leading into our home. The wooden frame loomed large, a portal into the life that had felt increasingly like a prison rather than a sanctuary. As I set my mug down, the quiet creaking of the house was almost a mocking echo of my internal chaos. It was as if the walls themselves whispered doubts and fears back at me. I could feel my stomach twist tighter with every passing moment. Are you going to hide out here all day? Came a sudden voice, startling me back to reality. I turned to see Greg standing at the threshold, his brow furrowed, eyes sharp, dressed in his tailored suit, looking too polished for a Tuesday. You really should get inside, you'll catch a cold. I forced a smile, my heart racing as I studied him. Was this the mask of the man I still loved, or merely a glimmer of the deception he hid beneath? Just enjoying the morning sunshine. How was your meeting? I asked, my voice slipping into the practiced cadence of a conversation that felt all too normal, all too unreal. Greg stepped onto the porch, shielding his eyes from the rising sun. It was fine, just the usual quarterly updates. Did you get a chance to call the plumber? He was expertly dodging my gaze, and my instincts prickled with suspicion. It's been leaking for weeks, and we don't want it to get worse. Yeah, about that, I said, attempting to keep my voice steady even as panic bubbled beneath my calm exterior. Now was not the time to show weakness or hesitation. I was thinking we should. I hesitated, searching for the right words. Maybe we should do something about that leak together, take it on as a project. Greg raised an eyebrow, curiosity mingling with suspicion. You want to fix it together? Is everything okay? His expression shifted, an ever so slight ripple of concern piercing through the usual placidity in his features. In that moment, I saw more than just the man I had known. I saw an actor in the role of a great husband, and that realization twisted the knife deeper into my already frayed emotions. Of course, everything is okay, Greg, I replied, my voice edged with false positivity. I just thought maybe it would be fun to, work together. I swallowed hard, casting my eyes down to the scuffed floorboards. I could feel my heart thudding painfully in my chest. Did he know? Was he simply pretending to play along? He tilted his head slightly, a motion that flickered through the air like an omen. All right. A quick smile crossed his lips. Just let me know when you want to get started. I will be home late tonight. Another dinner meeting. As always, another dinner meeting. The words hung in the air, heavy with their creeping dread. Sure, I replied, but my insides twisted with unease. A million questions raced through my mind, but one stood out above the rest. Who was waiting for him when the sun went down? Are you doing all right? He glanced at me again, his voice softer now. You seem a little off. I guess I'm just tired, I said, wishing I could bury my emotions beneath the surface. Lately I've just had a lot on my mind. The slightest hesitation hung before I added, that's all. It felt like a feeble excuse, slipping too easily from my lips, and the disappointed crease in his brow made me question everything once more. And that was when I realized the truth of our marriage. The air between us had become a web of unspoken words and tangled intentions, and in that moment I felt utterly trapped. Okay, he said, his voice thick with skepticism. Just remember, love, I am here if you need anything. He turned abruptly, and the moment stretched, laden with unacknowledged tension. The familiar scent of his cologne mixed with the autumn breeze, a bittersweet reminder of who I thought he was, or who he had pretended to be. As he disappeared back inside, I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, peering into the dark abyss below. I took a breath, trying to steady myself against the cold sweep of fear creeping through me. The world was too quiet, the colors of the leaves too vibrant against the impending chill of winter, and yet there was a storm brewing within me, clawing its way to the surface with every heartbeat. Damn it, I whispered to myself, the taste of bile creeping in with the weight of unspent rage. It was hard to ignore the way my heart felt constricted as memories fluttered around my mind, voices rising unbidden. I remember the early years when laughter echoed through our home, when joy came easy, when we shared everything. But as time wore on, those moments faded into distant shadows, eclipsed by my husband's changing patterns and whispers I could not ignore. The way he looked at his phone with urgency, the way he slipped from my grasp at unexpected times, it all created an unsteady foundation beneath my feet, a base crumbling beneath the weight of mistrust. I felt like a ghost haunting my own life, invisible even to myself as everything began to swirl around me, seasoned whispers of betrayal swirling like autumn leaves caught in a tempest. His deceit wrapped around me like a shroud. I knew I had to do something, and then it struck me like the first cold wind of winter slicing through the warmth of autumn. I would gather evidence. I would find the truth. My pulse quickened at the prospect of finally shining a light into the darkness. I will uncover your secrets, Greg, I vowed quietly, my jaw tightening in commitment. You have no idea what kind of storm you're about to unleash. The sun continued to climb into the sky, casting my world in golden light, but I felt nestled in the shadows of my own brewing storm. I picked up my coffee cup, now lukewarm against my palms, and turned back towards the house, my heart set on a plan forming in the corners of my mind. I would bide my time, gather my resources, and when the moment was right, every confrontation would explode around him like fireworks in the night sky. I would refocus my world. I would chase down every whisper, every text message, every late-night call that held the inkling of truth in them. I pressed my lips together, the texture of determination flying through my veins. The coffee cooled between my fingers, but I did not release it. I glanced back at the door as the sunlight cast long shadows across the porch steps. This is just the beginning, Greg, I whispered fiercely. My pulse thudded louder in my ears, the tingling heat of adrenaline coursing through my veins. The feeling of punishment was not simply an emotion, it was the heartbeat of my awakening, a rebirth of sorts that came with the certainty of my resolve. The finality thrummed in my veins, and no matter how far I had to go, I would uncover the truth. It was time for the unraveling to begin. The rain continued to drum against the windows, each drop splattering like a tiny bullet against the glass. I stood in the small kitchen of my modest home in Briarwood, Illinois, watching the droplets race each other down the pane. It felt like a reflection of my life. All this racing had led me to a point where I could finally make a move, but was still trapped in the same all-too-familiar solitude. My hands were trembling slightly as I wrapped them around a mug of steaming tea, the warmth spreading through my fingers like a comforting blanket. I needed that comfort now more than ever. The memories of those moments, the betrayal, the lies, haunted me like ghosts begging to be recognized. It was time to confront the reality of my situation and start putting my plan into action. The kitchen seemed darker than usual, shadows flickering as the overhead light buzzed faintly. I thought about how everything had shifted in my life, like a puzzle that had suddenly rearranged without warning. My heart raced at the thought of what I was preparing to do. In my mind, I was no longer just Alina Miles, the woman whose trust had been shattered. I was becoming something far more dangerous, a force driven by sorrow and rage. My mind flickered back to that day, what a typical Tuesday it was supposed to be, except it had turned into the day my life unraveled. Hey Alina, you there? The voice on the other end of the line yanked me back to the present, snapping me out of my swirling thoughts. It was my sister, Judy. Yeah, I'm here. My voice cracked slightly as I replied, a reminder of how on edge I still felt. Did you go to that cafe we love, you know, the one with the zucchini muffins? Judy was always trying to lighten the mood. It almost made me feel guilty. Not today, I am just at home catching up on things, I said, careful to keep the tremor out of my voice. Things, like in general, or things with that nasty business you told me about. I could almost picture her frowning in concern, her deep-set blue eyes narrowing like she always did when she worried. Yet more like that nasty business, I admitted. Just saying it aloud reminded me how I felt. Let's just say I'm formulating a plan. A plan? You mean like a plan to get him back? She hesitated, her voice dropping to a whisper as if she feared someone might overhear. Sort of, I replied, my heart racing at the thought. It was scary and exhilarating to be at the cusp of something completely new. I'm tired of being the one who got hurt. I want to turn the tables. Eek, this sounds serious, Alina. Are you sure you're ready for this? Judy asked, genuine concern clear in her tone. I mean, you remember the last time you tried to stand up to him? Yes, I remember, I said, my words clipped, recalling the way my ex-husband Mark had coldly turned my fears against me. I still shivered at the memory of his laughter echoing in that barren room, a sound void of any sympathy. But this time it will be different. I'm not going to let him get away with it. You are talking about revenge, right? Judy's voice was stern yet filled with a hint of worry. What's the plan exactly? You can't just, I don't know, set his car on fire or something. That hardly seems very classy. A low laugh bubbled up. No, no, nothing like that. I have an idea, something more subtle, more psychological. There was a pause on the line, and I could almost sense Judy trying to navigate through the waves of caution and intrigue. Psychological, I don't know, that sounds like playing fire with fire. Exactly, I said, almost relishing the sentiment. I need to make him feel what I felt when I discovered his betrayal. He needs to know the pain he caused. Okay, then what is the plan? Her voice was hesitant, like she was bracing for the worst. I bit my lip, contemplating just how much to reveal. I'm going to expose him, I said, each word escaping my lips with a sense of finality. He needs to be held accountable, and I'm going to find a way to make that happen. Expose him? In what way? Judy sounded like she was teetering on the edge of panic and curiosity. I have some ideas. My words came out slow and deliberate, each syllable heavy with purpose. He's involved in some shady dealings at work, and if I can gather enough evidence, he'll never get to play the innocent husband again. I could practically hear the wheels turning in Judy's head. But are you sure you want to do this? What if it backfires? What if it won't? I interrupted. I've thought about it long enough. It's time to take back my life in whatever way I can. I just need to stay focused and remember why I'm doing this. I just worry about you. What if he retaliates? There was genuine fear in Judy's voice. Let him try, I muttered defiantly, my grip tightening around the mug. I am not some scared little girl anymore. He chose to hurt me, and now I am going to show him how that feels. The silence stretched painfully long, and I could sense the tension building in the air, almost palpable. Be careful, Alina. Just promise me you won't do anything rash, she finally said, her tone softening slightly with concern. Okay, I promise, I replied, though I was already formulating the next steps in my mind, thoughts racing faster than I could express. After hanging up, I felt a whirlwind of emotions crashing within me: excitement, fear, determination, and dread. Despite the storm raging outside, my inner storm felt somehow fiercer. I turned away from the window, leaving the rain and darkness behind. This was not just about revenge, it was about reclaiming my identity. Thrusting my shoulders back, I stepped into the dimly lit living room, where I had spent countless nights filled with fury and sorrow, looking at all the pieces of my former life scattered like broken glass. Thinking of those pieces, my eyes landed on my laptop. The glowing screen illuminated the room. I crossed the space quickly, the wooden floor creaking with each step, the air thick with tension. I sat at the dining table that doubled as a workspace, feeling a slight thrill of electricity zip through my veins as the device powered on. It felt like a soldier getting ready for battle, preparing to execute a well-planned operation. Each click and thrum of the computer felt like a declaration of war against the man who had shattered so much of my world. With shaking hands, I opened my browser and began my research. I had spent hours thinking about how best to track down the information I needed, the sort of proof that would leave Mark reeling. Scrolling through pages on his workplace and related entities, I began concocting a web of connections I could leverage. What secrets do you hide, Mark? I murmured to myself, the words heavy with the weight of each utterance. Each word drew me deeper into the labyrinth of deceit he'd built. After a couple of hours, I stumbled across a forum linked to his company, a group that discussed potential shady dealings, competitors he'd wronged, and bizarre transactions that raised red flags. Leaning closer to my screen, I squinted to read with growing intrigue. I should join this forum. I whispered to myself, the excitement coursing through me. I need to get inside. I quickly put together a profile, choosing a nondescript username and a background to match. I was the average disgruntled employee, no real identity to draw attention, someone who might be able to work their way into the discussions without arousing suspicion. As I delved deeper into the conversations, I felt adrenaline kick in. Suspicious comments regarding compulsive spending habits, hidden assets, things started piecing together. Suddenly, my phone buzzed and startled me. Glancing at it, I saw a message from an unrecognized number. Maybe a marketing thing. I hesitated, but my finger instinctively pressed open. Are you ready to spill his lies? It read. My heart raced, confusion sweeping over me like a tidal wave. I stared at the screen in disbelief. Who is this? I typed, nerves flooding my fingers. Someone who knows his business better than he does. You're not just fighting against him, you're fighting the whole system behind him. I took a moment, still absorbing the chaotic but thrilling twist in the evening. There were others who felt like me, others who had suffered. I wanted to scream and shout, but instead I chewed nervously on my lip. What do you mean? I replied cautiously, curiosity squashing fear. Meet me at the old clock tower tomorrow night at 8. You'll find the resources you need, just come alone. Before I could type another questioning response, the screen blinked and the message disappeared into the ether, leaving behind a chill that crawled up my spine. What the hell? I muttered to myself, the thrill morphing into anxiety. My stomach twisted into knots as I processed the implications. Was it a trap? Was this a way for Mark's friends to intimidate me? Yet I felt that intense spark of daring igniting again. There was no turning back now. I had crossed a threshold into a world filled with shadows and secrets, and I was going to dive even deeper. As I looked outside again, thunder rumbled in the distance, as if mirroring my inner tempest. I took a deep breath, letting the storm inside me swell and rise, finally aligned with the storm outside. I could feel the weight of my resolve gathering like the clouds overhead, and I knew this was just the beginning. The air was thick with tension as I stood outside the rusty, wrought iron gates of East Briarwood Correctional Facility, my heart pounding in my chest. The sun was beginning to dip below the jagged horizon, casting an orange and pink hue across the sky, yet all I felt was the desperate ache for closure. It had been 2 years since I had set this plan in motion, and now, as I faced the inevitable, that ache was exacerbated by the excruciating weight of the memories that haunted me like ghosts in the twilight. I took a deep breath, inhaling the musty scent of damp earth mixed with the bitter tang of metal. It reminded me too much of the steel bars that kept the truth locked away. Today was the day I would face Nathan, the man who had taken everything from me, the architect of my devastation. With each step toward the entrance, I could hear my thoughts echoing in my mind. This is it. It all comes down to this moment. My fingers grazed the rough surface of the gate as I pushed it open, the creak sounding like a warning cry. The gravel crunched beneath my feet, a stark contrast to the soft whispers of the trees lining the path. I could hear the distant sounds of inmates laughing and shouting, a life so removed from my own. As I made my way through the labyrinth of security checkpoints, I focused on what I had to say, the words coiling in my mind like a tightly wound spring. "Alina Miles," I announced firmly as I approached the reception desk. The guard regarded me with canine-like suspicion, his eyebrows knitting together in a frown. "What business do you have here?" he grunted, his voice gravelly and uninterested. The illumination from the fluorescent lights above cast a harsh glow on his features, exaggerating the deep lines on his face. "I am here to see Nathan Hayes," I stated, trying to keep my voice steady. "I have something important to discuss with him." The guard's expression didn't change, and I felt the knots tightening in my stomach. "He doesn't get visitors on Wednesdays," he replied flatly, as if he dealt with disappointment on a daily basis and was wholly unaffected by it. Frustration bubbled inside me, but I maintained my composure. "Please, I really need to see him. It's important." The guard paused for a moment, his gaze piercing into my eyes, searching for weakness. "Wait here." He waved his hand dismissively before turning to make a phone call. I could feel my heart racing as I leaned against the cold metal counter, my head spinning with a mix of anticipation and dread. After what felt like an eternity, the guard returned. "He will see you, Miles. Follow me." I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat as I trailed behind him through the sterile hallways, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. The further we walked, the more I was assaulted by the sounds of prison life, distant shouts, the clanging of metal, and echoes of laughter that shimmered with a rawness I could hardly understand. It felt surreal, almost like being transported to another world. I could almost feel my resolve fading, but I pushed those thoughts aside. I reminded myself why I was here. We reached a small gray room where a single table divided two chairs, the cold, unforgiving surface reflecting the harshness of the environment. My heart raced as I took a seat, my palms sweaty against the table. After what felt like an eternity, Nathan stepped in, flanked by a guard whose presence was as imposing as the towering walls around us. Nathan looked older. Time had etched lines into his once boyish face, and his hair, once dark and thick, was now peppered with silver. But his eyes, those cold, calculating eyes, hadn't changed. They locked onto mine with a smirk that sent a shiver down my spine. "Alina," he said lazily, crossing his arms over his chest. "I never thought I would see you here. To what do I owe the pleasure?" The mockery in his voice stung, and I fought the urge to flinch. "Cut the crap, Nathan. You know why I am here." He leaned forward, resting his chin on his hands, looking far too comfortable for a man locked behind bars. "I believe I have a pretty good idea. Last time I checked, you were all about making me pay for the past. What is it this time, sweetheart? Looking for answers, closure?" I felt my face flush with anger, the heat rising into my cheeks. "Closure, is that what you think this is about?" "This was never about closure, Nathan. It's about revenge." The word hung between us, heavy and electrifying. His smirk faltered for a second, and I relished that flicker of uncertainty. "Revenge," he echoed, his voice laced with mock incredulity. I always did admire your spitfire, but what exactly do you think you can do from that side of the bars?" His words were like knives, each one cutting deeper than the last, but I held my ground, refusing to let him see how much his taunts affected me. "You may be behind bars, Nathan, but I have a plan that you will never see coming." His eyebrows arched, intrigued now. "A plan, you say? I'm interested. Why don't you enlighten me, Alina?" Taking a deep breath, I leaned in, locking my eyes onto his. "You have no idea how much I have changed since the last time we saw each other. Every second I spent plotting this was a second I couldn't take back, but in turn I became stronger. You once broke me, you took away my family, my happiness, but I am not the same woman I was then. He chuckled, though the sound held an edge. Look at you trying to play the vengeful hero. Do you really think this is about strength? You think you've transcended the fragile girl who watched from the sidelines? You are still stumbling in the shadows, hoping to scrape together the pieces. Stumbling? No, I am standing tall, Nathan. I am here to ensure that you understand the pain you caused. Sometimes the consequences of your actions come back to you 10 times stronger. His laughter echoed in the small room, and I felt every laugh like a slap across my face. And here I thought you'd finally grown up. Not taking any responsibility for your own choices, are we? Blaming me for your shortcomings? How predictable. My fists clenched on the table, my nails digging into my palms. This isn't about blame, this is about justice, and it won't come softly, Nathan. You will endure what you have done. Justice? He scoffed, leaning back in his chair with mock disbelief. Justice doesn't exist in this life, Alina. It is a figment, a fairy tale. What you seek is an illusion. You are much more alike me than you care to admit. The truth of his words hit me, and for a fleeting moment I felt the remnants of uncertainty creep back in. I knew I wasn't innocent. I had made choices that had brought me to this moment. But those thoughts dissolved as I remembered what he'd done, the wreckage he'd left in his wake. I may not be innocent, but I am not a monster, Nathan. And you know as well as I do that you are. This is your fate, and you will accept it. I will. His words dripped with condescension as he narrowed his eyes, intrigue dancing in their depths. You act like you have control over something here. You have no idea what fate truly is, dear. It can twist and turn in ways you could never imagine. I know more than you think, I shot back, my voice unwavering. I have spent years plotting this, studying you from afar. You may be behind bars, but I've managed to turn your world upside down in ways you cannot comprehend. Tell me, he leaned in closer, the smirk returning to his lips. What grand scheme do you think you've enacted? Are you telling me you've become the puppet master pulling my strings? It's adorable. I have gone to places you couldn't even imagine. While you rot here, I've gathered evidence, I've talked to people, I've pieced together everything you've thought you buried. You are down, but you are not out, and I still have the final card to play. His expression shifted ever so slightly, something flickering in those ice-blue eyes of his. What card? You think you can sway the realities of prison? You think you can change my fate? With newfound confidence, I could feel the adrenaline pumping through my veins, and I leaned in closer, my voice low and steady. I don't need to sway anything. The truth is already in motion, Nathan. I've spent all this time working on my plan, right under your nose, while you expected me to be helpless. But I am anything but helpless. I've gathered allies, witnesses, the people whom you think you left behind in the dust. They've spoken up, Nathan. They are ready to take you down. Justice is coming, and it will be brutal. His amusement twisted into something darker, something more sinister. Interesting, you really think they care enough to back your little crusade? You see, Alina, people like you don't get to wield power. You're a pawn in a game you never wanted to play, and those witnesses. They're just smoke and mirrors. I can extinguish them whenever I please. Or you could just sit back and watch as the walls start to close in on you, I countered, leaning back defiantly. You see, you think you hold all the cards, but what you fail to realize is that every villain meets their truth eventually, even in hell. His gaze darkened, but I remained resolute, feeling the energy shifting in the room. The weight of my words hung heavily around us, a palpable tension forged in the fires of our shared history. You underestimated me, Nathan, and that was your first mistake. Underestimating you? He feigned shock, but I could feel the pulse of anger tinging his tone. You were never a consideration, Alina. You were family. Yet here you are playing this dangerous game, thinking you have skill. Weakness is what I see. I can see it in your eyes. Maybe you can see it in my eyes, but I have taken more than you think. I know what happened that night, what you did, and that will be your undoing. His expression shifted, a mixture of confusion and anger flashing momentarily across his face, and I reveled in his momentary falter. What the hell do you mean? You don't know anything about that night. I know enough, I asserted, each syllable dripping with intent. Those secrets you've buried, now they are unearthed. I'm just the one to reveal them. The muscles in his jaw tight, a flash of panic crossing his features. You're bluffing. No, Nathan, I am not bluffing. Everything is ready, and when I leave this place today, it will all begin. The retribution you deserve is coming, and I will be standing with all of those warriors we lost. He chuckled again, a mixture of despair and disbelief. You think you're just going to walk out of here and embark on some noble crusade? No, my dear Alina, that's where you are wrong. You have just opened the gates of the fire, and you have no idea how much I can rain down that hell on you. All my emotions coiling inside me vibrated with energy as I held his gaze. No, Nathan, it's you who will find the gates of hell open wide. Your choices have led you here, and you will be the one who lacks the favor of fate. Fate, he repeated with disbelief, as if he was tasting a bitter pill. You really thought you were anything more than my shadow, hunting for echoes of a past you can't escape. I am no shadow, Nathan. I took a breath, emphasizing each word as if it were a lifeline that tied me to the present. I am no longer your victim. I've become the storm you never prepared for. And when it comes, it won't just end your little game, it will wipe you off the board completely. His eyes narrowed, the darkness swirling and flickering within them like a storm beginning to brew. You think you have won. You think any of this will matter in the end? I don't think I have won, I know I have, I retorted, the rush of adrenaline coursing through every fiber of my being felt electrifying. Your overconfidence will be your downfall. He leaned back in his chair, a chuckle escaping his lips as he regarded me with a newfound respect, though I could still see wariness lurking beneath. You're feistier than I remember, Alina. But remember this, in this game those who unveil themselves usually meet the worst of consequences. The guard stirred, glancing toward Nathan with a hint of concern as the atmosphere thickened with unspoken tension. I could feel our conversation shifting, and I sensed that time was slipping away. Why don't you enjoy the sweet taste of vengeance a little longer? The challenge hung thick in the air like a coiled snake ready to strike. You have put in so much effort, and maybe you deserve this moment. But I promise you this, you may think you are a storm, but every storm is followed by an aftermath, a reckoning that is even worse. I will return to the shadows and kneel before wreaking even greater havoc. The words twisted in my gut, and I knew that despite everything, the prison walls could not contain the extensive web he had woven. You will feel the truth of your actions. You will stand before those you've wronged. And when it comes, you will understand what true reckoning feels like. He leaned back, crossing his arms with that infuriating smirk on his face. You are quite entertaining, but we both know this is not over. In fact, I have only just begun to play. With a steady resolve, I stood my ground, taking a breath with the quiet strength I had cultivated over this journey. And this is just the beginning for me, Nathan. You will realize that sooner or later. Mark my words. Before I could let another moment of his poisonous words sway me, I turned on my heel and nodded to the guard, a series of muffled thoughts swirling in my mind, determination sparking to life within me. I stepped out of that room, leaving Nathan and the remnants of our tumultuous history behind. But as I left, chills raced down my spine, and deep down, I understood that nothing in this battle was ever what it seemed. The moment I stepped outside, the fresh air hit my face, a stark contrast to the oppressive darkness I had just left behind. My mind reeled with everything that had transpired, but I could feel the spark of resolve flickering brighter within me. It wasn't over, they were just beginning to feel the echoes of their actions, and I was ready to unleash the storm I had promised. I had come here for revenge, and Nathan would come to learn that the chains of destiny are burdened upon none but himself. As I walked away, each step resonated with the certainty that the real game was only just unfolding. I was unshackled, ready to release the fury of the storm brewing inside me, unraveling the very threads that would bind him in the chaos of his own making. I stood in front of the mirror, the dim light of the bathroom casting unflattering shadows across my face. I peered closely, searching for the remnants of the old Alina, the one who had been swallowed up by the bitterness and regret of betrayal, by the gnawing hatred that felt as if it had settled deep within my bones. Ian's actions had stolen years from me, and now, as I prepared for the next phase of my plan, I refused to be the broken woman I had allowed myself to become. My pulse quickened as I focused on the reflection before me. Who was this fierce woman staring back at me? I barely recognized her strength, her resolve. Time to let the past go and make him feel every pain he inflicted on me, I whispered, clutching the edge of the sink tightly. I remembered the day that everything changed, the day I walked into our home, innocently expecting the warmth of my husband's embrace, only to find him tangled in another woman's arms. The scene replayed in my mind like a broken record, the shock etched on my face, the mirth in his eyes as he tried to mask his guilt. I still felt the sharp sting of betrayal, but now I had a new mission. Okay, Alina, you can do this, I muttered under my breath, straightening my back as if I could align my physical posture with my emotional resolve. Today was not just another day, it was the day I executed the final part of my plan. The day I confronted Ian, the man who turned my life upside down, and showed him just how much I had awakened. I reached for my phone and scrolled through the messages that had been building up since that fateful day. One message lingered above the others, unyielding in its demand for attention. The last text Ian had sent me, a week prior, in which he'd tried to check in on me, desperate and regretful. There was no way I would let him think I was waiting for his words, yearning for his guilt. I hope you are doing all right, I still care about you, it read. I scowled at those words, feeling my stomach churn with a mix of anger and determination. I would show him how far I had come, slipping into my carefully chosen outfit, a fitted black blazer and sleek red dress that hugged my curves just right. I took one last look in the mirror. What had once represented softness now emanated power. Instead of the frumpy sweats I had wallowed in for months, I felt as if I were donning armor for battle. My dark hair cascaded in loose waves around my shoulders, framing my face like a dark halo of confidence. The woman staring back at me was not the one who had let Ian walk all over her. She was a phoenix rising from the ashes of a toxic past. A little mascara and some lipstick should do the trick, Alina, I said to myself, giving a final nod of approval. I walked through the house, each step echoing my newfound determination. The sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating the dust that hung in the air like memories I could finally let go of. I opened the front door and stepped out, taking a deep breath of the crisp air. It was invigorating, maybe even healing. As I drove to his office, my heart raced not out of fear but out of excitement. This was the culmination of everything I had planned, every sleepless night spent dreaming of retribution, every moment of tears I had cried in silent solitude. I wanted him to see me, the real me, not as a defeated wife, but as an empowered woman ready to reclaim her narrative. The familiar gray building loomed ahead, its imposing presence an ironic reminder of the life we had once shared. I parked the car and sat there for a moment, hands gripping the steering wheel tightly as I listened to the steady rhythm of my breath. "Breathe, Alina, you got this," I murmured, mentally preparing for what was to come. I entered the lobby, my heels clicking rhythmically against the polished floor like a heartbeat echoing through the vast emptiness of the space. They directed me to his office on the 15th floor, a number that carried a mocking heaviness now. "Good luck," I whispered to myself before stepping onto the elevator. As the door slid shut, I glanced at my reflection one last time. The lights in the elevator flickered above, casting temporary shadows across my face, and for a split second I questioned my resolve. Would he really change? But then I remembered the tears, the nights spent rehashing our conversations, the phone calls with my closest friends who had ministered to my broken heart. He had made his choice, and it was time for me to make mine. The elevator dinged, and the doors opened with a swoosh. I stepped out into the corridor, my heart pounding like a drum. The air felt charged with electricity, as if the world itself was waiting with bated breath to see what would happen next. I walked toward his office, each step heralding my approach. As I reached the door, I raised my hand to knock, hesitating for just a moment to calm my racing heart. "Breathe in, 1, 2, 3. Knock, knock," I said softly, gentling my hand against the wood. An echoing call from inside commanded, "Come in." I pushed the door open, ready to face him. Ian sat behind his immaculate desk, his tie loose around his neck, papers strewn across the surface in a chaotic mix that mirrored the disarray of his emotions. His scrubbed clean appearance was an illusion. They could not cover the guilt radiating from his very being. He looked up, and for a brief moment, shock washed over his face as he attempted to mask it with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Alina," he said, his voice tinged with disbelief. "I did expect." "Of course you didn't," I interjected, my voice firm and unwavering. "You never expected much from me, did you?" I closed the door behind me, the sound echoing like a hammer striking an anvil. I could see the tension in his body as he braced for my words. "Listen, I have no idea how to save it. You think you can just gloss over the reality of everything you've done? You don't get to dictate this conversation," I said, stepping closer to his desk, the distance between us shrinking with each passing second. My heart surged with adrenaline, releasing the fire I had carefully stoked for this moment. "But Alina," "No buts, you had your chance to explain things 6 months ago and all you delivered were excuses." "Excuses, Ian, I am done with those, I am done with you." I ran a hand through my hair, shaking my head in disbelief at the absurdity of his attempts to manipulate the narrative. "You think this is just about us? This is about me, the woman you tried to destroy." He flinched at my words, and for the first time I saw cracks in his facade. "I know I messed up, I was wrong. But I still care about you." His eyes pleaded with me like a child caught in the act, desperately wanting forgiveness. "Care, is that what you call it? You care about yourself, Ian. You care about how you look in front of everyone else. That woman meant nothing to you, did she? Just a means to an end?" The memory of that moment, the image of him wrapped around another woman, fueled my anger. The acid of betrayal bubbled underneath my skin, begging to erupt. "What do you want from me?" he asked suddenly, frustration flashing across his face. "Do you need me to apologize again? Do you need me to tell you how stupid I was?" "I want you to feel the way I felt," I shot back, my voice like ice. "I want you to taste the bitterness of betrayal, the cold silence that echoes in the halls of this empty heart." The room filled with electricity as the tension mounted, the air thick with words left unspoken. "Then what?" His voice raised slightly, his frustration morphing into defiance. "Do you want me to feel pain? How is that going to help you move on?" "It's not about helping me. It's about making you understand the consequences of your actions. You hurt me, Ian, and it's time you realize the weight of the harm you inflicted." I leaned closer, finding strength in the fire that raged in my belly. "You will carry this with you, and I will not allow you to walk away unscathed." "No, that's not how this works," he said angrily, pushing his chair back with force. "You can't just instill violence in the universe because you feel hurt." "Isn't that what you did?" I countered, relentless in my resolve. "You shattered everything we built, and now you are trying to act like the victim. You have been given a chance to change, Ian, but you are still running on old habits." My voice echoed as I reached the climax of my emotions, unraveling before him like a tightly wound band that was finally set free. "I regret it, I do, I swear, if I could go back." "You can't." You can't turn back time, you can't rewrite history with your regrets, but I can decide how mine unfolds and it will not include you. The boldness of my words surprised even me, but there was no backing down now. I took a deep breath, allowing the pause to sink in, to settle. I loved you. His voice lost its anger, replaced instead with a deep-rooted sorrow. Can't you see that? Love is not just a word thrown around casually. It is something you prove, something you earn with loyalty. You tossed it aside like it meant nothing. I crossed my arms, eyeing him pointedly. Maybe that's what I need to prove. His voice cracked with desperation, his eyes wide with a flicker of hope. Alina, let me show you, let me earn that back. Earn it? You think you can just walk back into my life and smooth things over with a few sincere apologies? It is not that simple. You had your shot and you failed. I turned away, feeling my heart warring against my mind. Part of me longed for reassurance, for a glimpse of the man I once loved, but the remnants of my dignity demanded I stand firm. I will not accept you just because you are sorry. A silence filled the space between us, thick and suffocating. I could see the reality sinking in, the denial fading from his expression, leaving only a deep sorrow that threatened to strangle him. Alina, please, he said, quieter now, a hint of vulnerability leaking through. I don't know how things got to this point. I wish I could change it. Then why didn't you try harder? You had every chance to stop. You could have chosen me. My heartbeat echoed in my ears, each word feeling like a battle cry for my soul. It was time to close this chapter for good. Then what now? He pleaded, running a hand through his hair, the disarray resembling the chaos in his eyes. What happens next? Are we just going to stand here pretending like none of this mattered? I paused, letting the weight of the question settle into my mind. What happens next is I finally end this. You need to experience the consequences of your actions, not just accept your guilt. It was quieter now, but definitive. I moved further back from the desk and looked him straight in the eyes. I know now that I am deserving of much more. And with that, I turned on my heel, ready to walk out of his life for good. It felt liberating, empowering. I would not stay to hear more excuses or have my heart dragged through the mud one more time. Instead, I was reclaiming my life, free from the chains he wrapped around me. But just as I reached the door, I heard him call my name again, his voice laced with desperation. Alina. I paused, my hand on the door, and glanced back at him. The man who had been my partner, my love, now a shadow of his former self. What? I asked, my voice steady but devoid of warmth. I am so sorry for what I did. I never meant to hurt you. I never wanted this, he confessed, his voice trembling. I could see the tears pooling in his eyes, the remorse that washed over his features. But I wouldn't fall for it again. Being sorry isn't enough, Ian. It won't erase the pain. Today is about closure for both of us. I felt a calm resolve wash over me as I opened the door and stepped over the threshold, leaving behind a man shackled to his actions while I emerged free. As I walked away, I didn't look back. The world felt lighter, brighter, and each step away from his office was a step towards reclaiming my own story. I realized then that I would not be defined by my past, but rather I would be the architect of my future. With every beat of my heart, I felt the chains of revenge slipping away, replaced by the stillness of determination. Today marked my awakening, and I would rise from the ashes, stronger, braver, and completely in control. Because no one, not even Ian, could take that feeling from me again, I stood in front of the large, ornate mirror in my bedroom, staring at the reflection of a woman I barely recognized. The soft afternoon light filtered through the sheer curtains, casting gentle shadows across the room and highlighting the dark circles under my eyes. I was exhausted, mentally and physically, from the chaos of the last few months. My plan had taken shape, and now it was time for the final act. Revenge was no longer just a whisper in the back of my mind. It was a full-blown symphony playing a crescendo in my heart. The anticipation surged through me like electric currents with every beat. I took a deep breath, smoothing my trembling hands over my dress. It was a deep crimson, the color of retribution, the fabric flowing elegantly around my curves, whispering promises of confidence that I hoped to feel. I had waited long enough. It had been 2 weeks since I last saw Victor at the charity gala. The way he laughed and spoke so smoothly, as if he had never wronged me, still infuriated me. The sting of betrayal was as fresh as the day I discovered his deceit. I had turned a blind eye for too long, convinced myself it was all in my head. But when I had seen him with Sarah, my best friend, my confidant, my resolve turned to stone. It was time to act. My heart raced as I recalled the email I had sent to him earlier that week. Meet me at the old Weaver's estate. I think we need to talk. The idea of him walking into a trap I had meticulously set fired up my adrenaline. I could see him now, strolling through those dilapidated halls, unaware of what lay ahead. The estate loomed in my mind like a ghost from the past, a reminder of times long gone when I would run through the gardens as a child, laughing with the other kids in Briarwood. But those memories felt tainted now, overshadowed by the visage of betrayal and hurt. I stood firmly in the present, the reality of what I had to do breaking through the fog of nostalgia. The day was finally here, and I could not allow fear or doubt to creep in like unwanted guests. I grabbed my phone and checked the time. There was still half an hour until Victor would arrive. I took a quick moment to touch up my makeup, adding a hint of red to my lips, the color striking against my pale skin. I felt powerful, fierce, ready to take control of the narrative that had spiraled out of my hands. The calmness in my heart contrasted sharply with the storm raging inside me. How could he do this? How could he betray my trust, a trust I had given so freely, and throw it back at me like it meant nothing? As I caught my reflection one last time, my determination solidified. I was not just facing Victor, I was reclaiming my life. I wanted him to see what he had lost, what he had carelessly discarded. I wanted him to understand the consequences of his actions. The drive to the estate felt like a surreal journey. The trees lining the road were whispering secrets to one another, their leaves rustling softly in the wind. The air was thick with anticipation, tinged with the scent of impending rain. I parked my car on the gravel driveway, the crunching sounds beneath my tires echoing off the crumbling walls of the weaver's estate. It stood imposingly against the heavy clouds that loomed above, its silhouette a haunting reminder of better days. The once grand building was now falling apart, repainted with vines, twisted and curling up the walls like fingers groping for salvation. I stepped out of the car, the gravel biting at my heels, and made my way to the crumbling staircase leading up to the heavy wooden doors. They creaked as I pushed them open, the sound reverberating through the empty halls, enhancing the atmospheric silence that engulfed me. The air was stale, filled with hints of dust and forgotten stories, but I welcomed the discomfort. It was a fitting stage for what was about to unfold. As I walked down the narrow corridor, I could hear my heartbeat drumming a steady rhythm against my ribs. I passed shattered pieces of furniture and faded photographs that told stories of happiness and love now long gone. Each step felt like a step closer to my liberation, yet reminders of my past lingered in the corners of the rooms. I took a breath and pressed on, finally reaching the room I had chosen for our confrontation, a large sitting room that overlooked the dense woods, where shadows danced with the flickering sunlight. This was it. I arranged the room to reflect the chaos inside me. I had set up 2 chairs facing one another, an old wooden table between us adorned with a single flickering candle. I wanted there to be some warmth, but not enough to create comfort. If there was one thing I had learned about Victor, it was that he thrived on the comfort of false narratives. I would pull the rug out from under him tonight. I glanced at the clock on the wall and felt the thrill of anxiety peak. Just as it ticked down the last seconds, I heard the heavy footsteps of Victor approaching. I took my seat, fingers gripping the edges of the chair. The sound of his knock made my heart skip a beat, and for a moment I considered running, fleeing into the night with the weight of unresolved anger still coiling tight around me. But I shook it off. No, I was ready for this. Elena, his voice was smooth as if he were stepping onto a conveyor belt, gliding through life without a care. I opened the door just enough to reveal my face, flaring a challenge in my eyes. Victor. I opened the door fully and gestured for him to enter. He stepped inside, taking a moment to survey the room, his brow furrowing slightly as he absorbed the dim candlelight and the charged atmosphere. It has been a while. Yes, it has, he replied, folding his arms defensively. You wanted to talk, what's this about? I wanted to talk about us, Victor, about you and Sarah, about the way you treated me. Well, it is not what you think, he began, and I saw that glimmer of confidence fade under my unwavering stare. Not what I think. I laughed bitterly, a sharp sound that echoed against the walls. You thought you could prance back into my life without any consequences. Is that it? Please let me explain, he said, uncharacteristically flustered. I leaned back in my chair, allowing a smile to creep onto my lips, a smile devoid of warmth, the kind that made people uneasy. Please explain how a betrayal of that magnitude is not what it seems. I never meant it to go that far, he said, his voice losing the bravado it had carried. I thought we were done, Elena. We have not been happy in years. Is that your excuse? I asked, feeling a surge of satisfaction rise inside of me. You thought because we had our problems it was okay to sneak around with my best friend? That makes it better. He squirmed in his chair, and I relished the sight of the man who had so easily discarded me now doubting himself under my gaze. It was different. I was lonely, he said, his voice dropping to a whisper. No, Victor. I leaned in closer, fixing my eyes on his. You were selfish. You cared about your needs and desires above everything else. You tossed me aside like I was nothing, and for what? For a fleeting moment of excitement? He opened his mouth to respond, but no words came out. Instead, he glanced around the room, looking lost. I took a breath, enjoying the tension building between us. Do you know what I have gone through? The pain, the betrayal. The moments spent crying over your choices. Do not twist this around on me. He finally found his voice, yet his bravado was fading fast. I made mistakes, yes, but so did you. Me, I echoed, incredulous. How dare you place any blame on me? I was here working on our marriage while you were busy playing house with someone else. Do you have any idea how ridiculous that sounds? He leaned forward, the shadow from the candle flickering against his face, casting him in an ominous glow. I can explain, Elena. We can work this out. I let out a harsh laugh, shaking my head. You truly believe that after everything you have done I would be willing to work this out? You have a great deal of hubris, Victor. With that, tension finally broke as he leaned back, his expression shifting from surprise to resignation. Then what do you want from me? I hesitated, feeling a rush of emotions, all tangled together like a chaotic web. I want you to face the damage you have caused directly and unequivocally. His chuckle was devoid of humor. You think this is about me? You are the one who keeps holding on to the past, he sneered, pretending to shake off the weight of my words. You cannot live in anger forever. Anger? I asked, surprised by his dismissal. No, Victor, anger has been my fuel. What I feel now is clarity, and with that clarity comes the need for justice. His eyes widened momentarily, but then he recovered, his previous show of confidence creeping back. Justice? What kind of justice can you even find? At that moment, I reached into my purse, pulling out a printed picture of him with Sarah, their faces closed, smiles bright and unbothered. This kind of justice. I slammed the phone on the table, the sound sharp and cutting through the air like a blade. Do you think you hold all the power here? Do you think I would let you walk away unscathed? He picked up the picture, his hands trembling as he studied it. How did you even get this? Does it matter? I replied, keeping my tone steady. You put your happiness first, Victor. Now let us talk about how I am going to make you feel every bit of regret for the pain you have caused me. This is ridiculous, Alina, he said, attempting to wave it away, but the anger in his voice suggested otherwise. You want revenge, this isn't you. I smiled, a genuine smile that felt like the surface of a boiling ocean ready to explode. Oh, it is me. It has always been me, just buried underneath the layers of your lies. I want to show you what it feels like to lose everything because of a careless decision. Victor's expression faltered. And what will that accomplish? It will open your eyes, I declared triumphantly, leaning toward him, the candlelight illuminating the deep shadows in my eyes. Perhaps then you will understand the depths of betrayal, or perhaps you will simply keep playing the victim. He dropped the photo on the table like it burned his fingers. You are sick, Alina. I never realized how obsessed you had become. Obsessed? I shouted, the word hung heavy in the air between us. You have no idea. Maybe I should go, he suggested, inching backward in his chair. I could see the panic creeping in on his face, the denial he had always displayed zipping to the forefront again. His instinct was to escape, to run from the storm he had created, but I could not let that happen, not tonight. No, we're not done here, I countered. You will sit there and hear me out, or I will make sure you regret it. Threats, he scoffed, crossing his arms defiantly, but there was a glint of fear dancing in his eyes. What are you going to do, turn into the villain? Turn into the villain? I echoed, my laughter bouncing off the old walls. I am not the villain here, Victor. You made me this way. Every cruel word you uttered, every glance shared with Sarah, every late night you claimed was for work, you groomed me into the person I am now. His lips turned thin, the earlier bravado cracking like glass. I had no idea you were capable of this. Capable? I repeated, savoring the word. I am more capable than you ever dreamed, Victor. Tonight I will show you. I always said I would do the right thing, but what if I am done being righteous? You do not know what you are getting into, he said, desperation clawing at his voice. You cannot just undo 7 years like this. I stood up, the chair scraping against the wooden floor, my heart pounding with exhilaration and rage. No, I cannot undo the past, but I can forge a new future. One where you will understand what it feels like to have everything slip from your grasp. Fleeing responsibility is not an option. I felt like I was untying knots in my heart, loosening the hold that Victor had had over me for so long. He may have thought he was powerful, but tonight I would be the one to pull the strings. Victor rose to his feet, trying to retain an air of confidence. You are playing with fire, Alina. I don't think you understand the depths to which you could fall. Falling? I laughed again, but it was softer this time, like a warning. I have already fallen, now I'm ready to rise. Your time is up, Victor. You do not get to control this narrative any longer. He took a step back, the panic returning to his eyes. What do you want then? I gazed into his fearful expression, and for a brief moment pity washed over me. But then I remembered the betrayal that had cut deeper than any knife. I want an apology. A genuine one here and now, for everything you did to me, for every moment you made me doubt myself. And when you are done, I want you to walk out of here and never look back. You are insane, he spat, his face flushed with anger. You think I would give you that? You think I am going to lay myself bare for you to gloat over? Unless you want me to spread that lovely photo to everyone we know, I suggest you reconsider. He stiffened, his jaw tightening as he realized the situation he found himself in. This is blackmail. No, it is called accountability, I countered firmly. The candle flickered again, casting shadows on the walls, shadows that began to resemble faces, friends, family, the people I had hidden my pain from when all I wanted was to scream. You want me to degrade myself, he said finally, and his eyes flashed with anger. You think I am just going to beg you for forgiveness? I think you owe me that much, I insisted. If not for the good times we had, then for the person you claim to be. It is not about me anymore, Victor. It is about you facing your demons. He hesitated, and I could see the gears turning in his mind, the conflict brewing deep within him. The desperation had started to fade, replaced now with a hint of realization that perhaps he had underestimated me. Sorry, he began, his voice low, barely above a whisper. I never meant for things to end up this way. Not for me, Victor. I stepped closer, holding my breath as the air thickened with tension. Look at me and truly admit to what you have done. He sucked in a breath, his chest rising quickly. I made a terrible mistake. I hurt you, Alina, and for that I am sorry. I held his gaze, searching for sincerity, hoping to find something resembling remorse. That is a good start. Now say you regret choosing Sarah over me. His throat shifted as the words struggled to escape. I regret, say it, I pressed gently, pushing him further. I regret choosing Sarah over you, he finally admitted, his voice barely above a murmur, the admission seeming to crush him. The thrill of victory rushed through me like wildfire. I had not been wrong to stand tall and reclaim my narrative. Now will you leave? He hesitated, his eyes darting away, searching for something, a means to regain control perhaps. I will leave, he said finally, his voice shaky. But you have no idea what you are depriving yourself of. Goodbye, Victor, I said, my tone final. Do not come back. The sound of his footsteps echoed ghostly behind him as he walked out, the door creaking closed as proof of the weight pressing on both of us. As I caught my breath, I felt liberated, lightness settling in my chest like a gentle breeze after the storm. I had finally claimed my power, seized control over my life again. With every moment that passed, I envisioned the shadows disappearing, giving way to potential instead of pain. I sat back in the chair, eyes on the door for a moment, before glancing back at the dim candlelight that had borne witness to my reclamation. No longer would the ghost of our past haunt me. I would cherish the lessons learned and carry them into a future defined by choices made, not the price of betrayal. As I extinguished the flickering flame, I felt a finality wash over me. I was ready to step forward into the new normal, leaving behind the whispers of betrayal, writing my own story ahead, one not dictated by Victor or the memories of our time together. It was time to embrace the unknown and find joy in the pieces of myself I had lost. Tonight marked the end of what had been and the beginning of something entirely new.